Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to break down one of the most, I think, universal and painful human experiences. We're talking about that feeling when you suffer a really deep emotional loss and it feels like it's, literally tearing your body apart. That real physical punch to the gut, or the crushing pressure on your chest that makes it hard to breathe. For a long time, we've just called this poetry, right? A metaphor. But our mission in this deep dive is to get past that. We're going to answer the question that all our sources are asking: why does intense grief actually physically hurt? We're looking for the hard science here. We want to show that these feelings aren't just in your head, they're not imaginary, they're a real biological event.
And that's exactly where the science really steps in. Because when researchers started seeing these patterns, the tight chest, the back pain, the headaches that were directly linked to emotional trauma, they realized they couldn't just say, oh, it's stress. It was too specific, so they gave it a name. They actually call it the pain of grief.
Okay, so it has a clinical name.
It does, and that label is important because it shifts the whole conversation. It's not philosophy anymore, it's neurology. What's happening is a stress response so powerful, it actually hijacks your body's pain pathways.
And here's the part from the source material that, it's just staggering. The brain imaging studies show that deep sadness activates the exact same pain centers in the brain that light up when you have a physical injury, like a burn or a broken bone. We're not talking about similar areas.
No, not at all. It's identical neural pathways.
So if you're looking at an fMRI scan, your brain's operating system doesn't really have a different folder for, say, heartbreak versus a deep cut. It just registers one thing: pain.
Exactly. The brain is basically treating that emotional loss like a major physical trauma, like an internal injury that needs the entire system to go on red alert. It's a survival mechanism that's just gone into overdrive.
Okay, so that raises a really interesting question that the sources also brought up. If the circuitry is identical, why don't painkillers work for grief? You can't just take an ibuprofen for a broken heart, right? If it's the same pain center, why isn't the treatment the same?
That is a fantastic question, and it really helps us get more specific about what's happening. So while the main pain centers are shared, the brain has two different ways of processing pain. Think of it as the sensory part and the affective part.
Effective part.
Yeah. The sensory part is just the data. It's the where does it hurt and how much, a sharp pain in your foot. Physical painkillers are great at blocking those signals from even reaching the brain.
Right.
But the affective component, that's the unpleasantness, the emotional side of it, the misery, the distress, the sheer awfulness of the pain. And that's where emotional pain lives.
So grief is almost purely that second part. The effort part.
It's overwhelmingly the affective part. And that component is much more resistant to standard physical painkillers.
So even though the same brain structures are firing, grief is hijacking the part that's responsible for that deep emotional distress, not the part that just says, ouch, my arm hurts.
Precisely. And that brings us to the specific part of the brain where this all comes together, the place where both types of pain meet and where that emotional distress gets translated into that crushing physical feeling.
And this is the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC.
That's the one.
Let's spend a minute on the ACC, because I think if you understand this one structure, the whole thing just clicks into place. Where is it? What does it do?
Okay, so the ACC is buried deep in the brain, right in the middle, and it's kind of folded over the part that connects the two halves of your brain. Its job is really complex, but for pain, you can think of it as the master control center. It's the part that decides how important a pain signal is.
So it's not just registering the pain, it's evaluating it.
Exactly. When you stub your toe, one part of your brain registers the location and the impact. But it's the ACC that immediately kicks in and asks, okay, how bad is this? Do I need to stop what I'm doing? Should I cry? It assigns the emotional weight to the physical sensation.
It's the ouch factor.
It's the ouch factor, yeah. It decides how much you should care about the pain.
Okay, that makes total sense. It determines the response.
Yes. And the studies on this are incredible. They've done fMRI scans where they make people feel socially rejected.
How do they do that?
In one famous study, they had people play a virtual ball tossing game with two other players who were actually just a computer program. After a while, the program just stops throwing the ball to the real person.
Oh, wow. That's harsh.
It is. And when that happens, the person's ACC lights up like a Christmas tree. And what's amazing is it looks almost identical to the scan of someone who is having intense physical heat applied to their arm.
So a burn on your arm and being left out of a game. They look the same to this part of the brain.
They look remarkably similar. The ACC sees both as a major problem, a threat. It registers that social disconnection as a massive error signal, something that's as dangerous to your survival as a physical wound.
And that's why you feel that physical pressure in your chest.
Huh?
Your brain is flagging that emotional pain as a real, urgent physical event.
Yes. The signal is just danger, injury, and the body responds accordingly.
This moves us from just general aches and pains to something much more serious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if your brain thinks the body is under a real physical threat, the downstream effects could be huge.
And that's exactly where the science gets very, very concrete. When that stress response from the ACC gets overwhelming, it just floods your system with hormones, and that can have a direct and sometimes dangerous impact on your heart.
Which brings us to a condition that is, it's dramatically named, but it's very real. And the sources all talk about it as the clearest link between an emotional event and a physical injury. Broken heart syndrome. This isn't just a turn of phrase. It's a recognized medical condition. It shows how this unity of pain can turn into a genuine physical crisis.
It does. The clinical name is Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, but everyone calls it broken heart syndrome. And it's basically a condition where intense emotional stress, it could be grief, a sudden shock, even extreme anger, it causes a rapid and dramatic change to the heart muscle itself.
So the heart muscle is actually changing.
It is. What happens is you get this massive, overwhelming surge of stress hormones, mostly catecholamines, which are things like adrenaline.
Your fight or flight hormones.
Your fight or flight hormones, exactly. But instead of getting you ready to run from a threat, this flood of adrenaline is so intense that it's basically toxic to the heart cells. It stuns them.
It's like the body's alarm system gets pulled so hard that it breaks the engine.
That's a great way to put it. This flood of hormones causes a specific part of the heart, the left ventricle, which is the main pumping chamber, to suddenly weaken and balloon out.
It balloons out.
Yeah, it changes shape. The shape it takes looks like a traditional Japanese octopus trap, which is called a takotsubo. That's where the medical name comes from.
That is just incredible.
Right.
So when someone is going through this, when their heart is literally changing shape from stress, what are the symptoms? What does it feel like?
Well, the terrifying part is that the symptoms often look exactly like a heart attack.
Wow.
The person gets sudden, crushing chest pain. They feel extremely short of breath. Their heart might be beating really fast or irregularly. In the emergency room, the first assumption is always a heart attack. They'll rush the patient in for treatment.
What is not a heart attack?
It's not. And here's the key difference. In a typical heart attack, you have a blocked artery. But with Takotsubo, the arteries are usually clear. There's no blockage. The damage is purely chemical, driven by that emotional crisis.
It's profound. That emotional pain can create a physical event so severe that it mimics one of the most critical medical emergencies we know.
Absolutely. And while it's usually temporary, the heart muscle typically recovers, the body is in full-blown crisis mode. The sources make it so clear. Your internal systems are registering that emotional wound with the same severity as a catastrophic system failure.
So this all connects back to the brain, to the ACC. The ACC sends the alarm signal, and the heart responds with a chemical surge that causes actual physical damage. It's one unified system.
It is. The whole thing is interconnected.
So the biggest takeaway here from all the sources is really this idea, this unity of pain. The brain, at a certain point, just can't tell the difference between a psychological injury and a physiological one.
It really can't. The ACC studies prove it. Whether the injury is to your body or to your social self, which, from an evolutionary perspective, is just as critical for survival, the distress alarm is the same.
So an emotional crisis isn't just a head thing.
No, it's a legitimate, measurable, full-body physical crisis, and it needs to be treated like one.
This really changes how you think about healing. We're all told to be strong or push through grief. But if your body is logging this as a physical injury, then trying to ignore it or suppress it, that must have consequences.
It has huge consequences. And this gets to a really personal point that the sources emphasize. Because these pain pathways are so deeply linked, your body is feeling the sadness and the stress, even if you're trying to hide it.
Even if you're not consciously thinking about it.
Exactly. Suppressing grief takes a massive amount of mental energy. And that effort, by itself, keeps pumping stress hormones into your system. So even if you're putting on a brave face for the world, your ACC is still screaming threat, and your heart is still marinating in adrenaline.
So you're not just prolonging the emotional pain, you're actually extending the physical injury.
You are. And this explains so much. It explains why people who are going through chronic grief often get sick, why their immune system is suppressed, why they have all these unexplained aches and
Their
pains.
body is still in crisis mode.
Their body is still in crisis mode. Your conscious mind might be trying to move on, but your nervous system has received a clear, non-negotiable signal. We are injured. We are in pain. The crisis is ongoing. Your body doesn't care about social expectations. It only cares about that injury signal.
This makes you totally rethink that old idea of someone, falling ill and dying shortly after losing a spouse. We used to think of it as a coincidence or maybe just giving up. But scientifically, it could be a direct result of that sustained stress on the body.
It could very well be a direct physiological result. And I think the validation this gives to anyone listening is just immense. You're not weak. You're not imagining it. The physical reality and the grief is real, and it's backed up by decades of neuroscience.
So just to quickly recap the big ideas from this deep dive, we've got the scientific term, the pain of grief. We have the location in the brain, the anterior cingulate cortex, where emotional and physical pain meet. And we have the most serious physical outcome, broken heart syndrome or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. We've basically established that taking care of an emotional wound is, in a very real sense, taking care of a physical one.
So here's the final thought I'd like to leave you with. If your brain processes a severe emotional injury in the same way it processes a severe physical injury, what does that mean for how we think about recovery?
Right.
When you or someone you love is going through a profound loss, what we call emotional support isn't just about comfort. It's not just a nice thing to do. It is a critical intervention.
Wow.
It's basically a form of treatment for a real physical condition that demands the same patience, the same validation, and the same healing time as recovering from major surgery. You're not just mending your feelings, you're literally mending your body.
That places such a powerful and, I think, necessary value on self-care and on community during those incredibly difficult times. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the real physical cost of grief. We hope this knowledge